From kings who thought they were made of glass, to kings who slept with a sword, to kings who collected hundreds of wigs, this is the weirdest habit of every single French king, from 481 to 1848. So, why were these kings so strange? Well, imagine being totally isolated, surrounded by people who only say yes. Throw in a dash of extreme superstition, a sprinkle of absolute power, and some seriously bizarre medieval medicine. With immense pressure from the royal court, it's no wonder these rulers developed some truly weird habits. Now, let's get started. Our journey begins with the Merovingian dynasty. First up, Clovis I, who believed random objects held magical powers. Then there was Clothar I, who punished people with bizarre fire tests. Charibert I had an addiction to collecting wives one after another. His son, Chilperic I, fancied himself a poet, but, well, let's just say his verses were famously terrible. Clothar II was so paranoid he slept with a dagger under his pillow, and his successor, Dagobert I, did something similar, sleeping with a full sword for protection. Clovis II had a strange obsession with dwarf entertainers, while Childeric II had a violent, almost crazy love for hunting. Theuderic III was a hoarder, but only for gold. And finally, the last Merovingian king, Childeric III, was obsessed with growing his hair extremely long, a symbol of royal power he clung to. Next, we enter the Carolingian dynasty. Pepin the Short spent his reign obsessed with proving he wasn't too short, often tackling massive feats to overcompensate. His son, the great Charlemagne, had a rather unusual habit. He loved inviting random people to bathe with him in his hot springs. A bit awkward, Louis the Pious was consumed by guilt, leading to extreme fasting and self-punishment. Charles the Bald absolutely loved wearing extravagant royal wigs, setting a trend for centuries. Louis the Stammerer was paralyzed by indecision, obsessively praying before making any choice, big or small. His son, Louis III, was an athlete who practiced sprinting constantly, preparing for battle on foot. Carloman II shared a love for hunting, but his was a dangerous obsession. Charles the Fat had a peculiar issue. He was a chronic sleepwalker. Odo, on the other hand, carried a whip everywhere he went, just in case. Charles the Simple was, well, simple. He trusted everyone way too much, which ultimately cost him. Robert I was a collector, but his passion was swords. Rudolph was a fashionista, loving incredibly expensive and flashy clothing. Louis IV had a deep fear of being poisoned and refused to eat until someone else tasted his food first. Lothair was a firm believer in prophecies, convinced his dreams could predict the future. And finally, Louis V was the party king, addicted to wild celebrations and feasting. Now for the long-reigning Capetian dynasty. Hugh Capet, the first of his line, hoarded religious relics, believing they gave him divine power. Robert II, known as the Pious, lived in extreme fear of demons, seeing them everywhere. Henry I was so shy, he completely avoided public speaking whenever possible. Philip I was a massive glutton, overeating daily to an epic degree. Louis VI, nicknamed the Fat, followed suit, eating huge meals right before heading into battle for energy. His son, Louis VII, had an unusual phobia for a king. He was terrified of horses. Philip II, or Augustus, was a master of espionage and loved spying on his own nobles. Louis VIII was obsessed with cleanliness in an age that wasn't. The famous Saint Louis, or Louis IX, took humility to a new level, regularly washing the feet of poor people. Philip III was a zookeeper of sorts, constantly collecting rare and exotic animals. Philip IV became obsessed with a single goal, destroying the Knights Templar. Louis X was a heavy drinker, constantly sipping wine, which he claimed was for his health. His infant son, John I, was king for only 5 days, so we'll give him a pass on weird habits. Philip V was a man of routine, with an addiction to strict, unchanging schedules. And Charles IV was a fashion-obsessed ruler who changed his entire outfit multiple times a day. Welcome to the Valois dynasty. where things get even weirder. Philip VI loved flashy fashion, specifically extremely bright, eye-catching clothes. John II was so obsessed with the concept of honor that after being captured and released, he voluntarily returned to prison in England when his ransom wasn't paid. Charles V was a big believer in astrology, consulting the stars before every major decision. And now for the most famous one, Charles VI, the Mad, who had periods where he genuinely believed he was made of glass and would shatter if touched. His son, Charles VII, was the complete opposite. He was terrified of touching weapons. Louis XI was deeply superstitious, carrying magical charms and amulets with him everywhere for protection. Charles VIII was a sports addict, known for his reckless running and games. Louis XII was an extreme gardener who found his greatest joy in planting trees. Francis I followed the family tradition of collecting exotic animals. His son, Henry II, loved the thrill of danger and enjoyed jousting for fun, a habit that would tragically lead to his end. Francis II was a melancholic king who believed he was cursed. Charles IX was yet another hunting fanatic. And Henry III became infamous for his love of wearing women's clothing and elaborate makeup. Finally, we arrive at the famous Bourbon dynasty. Henry IV was known for many great things, but personal hygiene wasn't one of them. He rarely bathed. His son, Louis XIII, had a secret hobby. He loved playing with dolls in private. The Sun King, Louis XIV, was obsessed with his own image, filling his palaces with mirrors to gaze at his reflection. Louis XV had a deep-seated fear of being alone and couldn't sleep unless people were in the room with him. The ill-fated Louis XVI had a surprisingly normal hobby. He was a skilled locksmith and loved making intricate keys. After the Revolution, Louis XVIII returned to power and had a serious problem with overeating, sometimes eating until he literally fainted. Charles X was an extreme germaphobe, terrified of dirt and illness. And our final king, Louis Philippe I, enjoyed escaping the pressures of royalty by walking the streets of Paris in disguise, pretending to be an ordinary citizen. So why were they all so weird? Imagine living in a bubble where advisors might manipulate you, where medicine was based on superstition, and where absolute power made you paranoid. With zero privacy and no one to tell you no, it's easy to see how these strange habits took root. So out of all these rulers, which French king do you think had the weirdest habit? Let me know down in the comments. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to follow for more strange history.